Today I'm going to show you how to paint a realistic watercolour droplet and also how not to paint one. Let's get the brushes wet and let's get started. Now this one, as you can see, is far too wet, and that's because what I've done with this, I've not really thought about drying times or thinking about the colours too much or where I'm placing the colours. So it's looking rather flat, isn't it? Really flat. I used the wrong brush size. I actually used this one, which is my mixing brush. You can see there's no tip on that, so there's no way I'm going to be able to paint fine details with that brush. So basically with that one, as I said, it's too wet and everything is blended together. Now this one, as you can see, is much better because what I've done, I've wetted the grass stem first of all and just put a bit of colour in there. Give it a dry with a hairdryer, then painted this one separately. It's that way around, it's much more isolated, isn't it? And it doesn't blend into everything else at the same time. The only thing we're missing within here is much more of a contrast and details within this water droplet, but it's definitely better, isn't it? We've even got a bit of a glow down here on the shadow, and even better, we've got the highlights already showing through the paper there. But I have to admit, it's a much cleaner look. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to paint this in real time, in detail as well. So let's get ready for that. Let's move everything up so I can actually do it clearly. And the first thing I need to do is get my putty eraser. Now this one is Faber-Castell, okay. It's a very malleable eraser. I don't kind of rub with that, I just very lightly dab, like so. I'm going to lift some of that pencil off. I do not want this outline too dark. I'm going to be using two brushes today, and these are going to be by Rosemary & Co. So what I'll do, I'll pop a little link down below for you for both of these. The first thing I'm going to do is think about the shape of the water droplet. Now, I've noticed when I look at all of these, they're all different shapes, aren't they? They're not completely round. None of them are, not really. You can see we've got some elongated ones, we've got some wobbly ones here. So what I'm going to do, get a little bit of green, and this is just simply sap green, that's all this is at the moment. And you can play with the colours as well. The colours aren't exactly right, I'm not too worried about that for this tutorial. But if you want them to be even better, you want to do a lot of colour matching before you make a start on a painting anyway. So I'm going to very lightly draw around this. Now when I loaded this brush up, I loaded it like that, okay? And then I rolled it and pulled away. Then give it a tap or two on some kitchen roll. That means it's not too overloaded. I'm going to bring this all the way down very carefully, very gently. Down to there. If you find the brush is too overloaded, your lines will be far too thick. Clean water on the inside of the water droplet. Now when you tilt your head to one side, you can see it shine on the paper. If you see that it's starting to kind of roll and rivets the water down the bottom, because my board is on a slight angle here, then I know it's far too wet. I need to allow that to soak into the paper a little bit. So I'm going to go straight in, a little bit of yellow. This is a lemon yellow, by the way. Just a touch of that, first of all. Now when you're doing anything like this, you need to work in layers. And if you don't work in layers, you're not going to get the three-dimensional feel to that water droplet, are you? Otherwise it'll just be like this one here, really flat. That's nearly there. A little bit of our very bright, vivid green. And the thing is, with a water droplet, it tends to reflect its surroundings. Very often upside down as well. Yeah, I know. That's what I found. Back into the sap green. So the colours you've got within inside the water droplet will be the same colours as the area around it. So in this case, obviously the blade of grass. So a little bit more just to there. I'm just going to bring this across. Just very lightly. Add a little bit of very light detail to the paper here. I want to blend this as well a little bit. Now you don't want to disturb that now. Give it a dry with a hairdryer or let it dry naturally, then you find the colours will blend nicely together as well. So next thing I want to do, while that's drying, put a little bit of colour in the background. Be very careful not to touch that water droplet. And paint around this other little droplets, as you can see on the paper there. Okay, a bit of yellow. So lemon yellow. Just dropped into that area there. Very bright, isn't it? I very often use yellow within grass. They often do. Just to brighten it to begin with, and that acts as a sort of a base layer, a foundation layer of colour. And then over the top of that yellow, let's go straight to the sap green first of all. I don't know if I need that one now. Just add a little bit of that in, probably too much. If it's too much like that, Wash your brush out, like I'm doing now. Right? Clean, damp brush and merge it together. Give it a blend. Then do the same on the other side, okay? Okay, well all I need to do now is give it a quick dry with a hairdryer. Okay, it's nice and dry. So I'm going to go for a little bit of sap green. Let's pop that into this one here, look. Some of our lamp black. I know, you can make your own black if you want to as well. And I've got a little video on how to make your own black, so either 2 colours, which is this one here, or either 3 colours. There you go. Give us some general ideas. I'll pop a link to the top right hand corner for you, okay? So using this sort of mid-tone, what I'm going to do is first of all, very carefully, go around the outside edge first of all, only on one side though. Very carefully like that. And then I'll start to think about the structure inside this water droplet. Because I've actually got a different area here which is slightly darker. It's lighter that side, darker this side. I know. Remember, it's reflecting the surroundings, that's all it's doing. So there. Then we've got an area here which is a bit of a line going across to here. So I'm just going to just put a bit of a suggestion of a jagged line just there. So all I'm doing at the moment is mapping out what I can see inside that water droplet. Now I'm looking at this photograph every few seconds. My eyes are flicking back and forth to my reference photograph on a tablet in front of me. Or an iPad, whatever you've got. Mobile phone, it doesn't really matter. Thinking about the overall shape of the patterns you can see inside that little droplet there. Just a few little scumble marks here and there, which suggest just a little bit of detail in those areas. Clean, damp brush, a little bit of the sap green. This is where we fill most of this area in. Really? I know. I'm going to fill this in. All the way around this bit of a landscape here. Looks like a bit of a plot of land, doesn't it? And then the same around the outside edge. I'm going to scumble. And all the scumbling is using the side of the brush and going, blah, that sort of idea. Now don't forget to click on like and subscribe down below. At least when you subscribe to my channel, you shouldn't miss one of my videos. Just a small amount of our black-green colour. This is to begin with. Once this is dry, we'll go over the top of that again with another layer. I can bring some of this sort of green colour along here as well. Probably lighten it slightly more now. Probably it's about here. Bring it across the top of the water droplet. Look at those shapes all the time. That's all I'm doing here. So what I'm doing now, I'm using a very watered version of a yellowy green. And everything in the background here is nice and dry. It has to be dry before we put a glaze over the top of it, otherwise it won't work. You'll end up moving what's underneath. You don't really want to be doing that, not really. Okay, I need that to dry. I'm going to fine tune all of those details in there. So when that's dry, I'm going to do the same on the other water droplets all the way around. We'll do the same with another layer over the top, but look at where it's really dark in the middle as well. So I'm going for my dark, kind of greeny, watery version still though, of the kind of black and green I'm using. Lamp black and obviously the sap green. I'm placing this in just where I can see it's darker within that reflection there. A little bit darker around there. Skipping places so it's not all over. Now I need to lighten that edge down a touch. I'm going to get some kitchen roll. Wash the brush out. Give it a quick semi-dry like that. And going over that edge very lightly. Keep going over it like that. Then just bring your kitchen roll in and dab. You'll end up with a small amount, you can just see it on the edge there, of green on the end of that kitchen roll. Just to very lightly dab it and lift it off. Just neaten out this edge now. Very carefully using the very tip of the brush. Okay, let's do some lifting off now. Remember what we did before? Load the brush, rack it for some kitchen roll just once like that so it's just slightly damp. And then we can start taking off a few little details here and there. Make sure everywhere else is dry first. Tiny, tiny circles and marks like that. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Then very lightly lift, and we've got a little blip, just a little tiny dot And you can add as many in as you want to create extra little sections here and there around this water droplet. Okay, now you want some watercolour white or white gouache, anything like that will do. And we can use this to add some highlights onto the paper. Now, I do have a video on using white paint if you're interested. Little techniques and tips. So I'll pop a little link up there for you again. So you can have a look at that once you've watched this one, okay? So I'm going to tap this in bit by bit. Tap it in. Don't be too neat with it straight off. The only time you want to be neat is around this very edge here. But we'll do that in a bit once we've painted the shadow. Just slightly encroaching now within the green area here. Just stippling and tapping. And the good thing about white paint is that we can soften it. You know, we can make it really bright if we want to. We've got a very bright highlight just there, haven't we? Then down here. It's also quite jagged. It's not a really fine line, is it, in there? It's very broken up in places. Just here. It gets wider. It comes down there. Again, the highlight there. Very bright highlight. Let's put a few now in the marks I've made there, and we can actually add additional marks. Then once this white is dry, I'll pop a little bit of yellow paint over the top of that. We can also thin this white down. So some of the areas are not quite as bright, a bit like me really. Then what you can do, you can thin the white paint down just a touch. Just by adding a little bit of water towards that white. So I've got a little bit more water in there, thin it down and use a milky version rather than a creamy version of the white. So it's not quite as intense. So what I want to do now, add a bit of white into the rest of these here. Then I can start to think about adding shadow around the back here and also some details on that grass. I need to wet around all these water droplets. What I can do, put a little bit of masking fluid on top of them if you want to. The only thing with masking fluid, it can remove some of the paint. So I don't think I'll do it that way this time around. So probably to about there. Grab some yellow. We'll pop that in here first of all. You've got some neater yellow actually, to be honest with you. So it really glows around this area here. And then we're going to our green. Don't bother washing the brush out, you don't need to. Then draw out the shape that you need for the shadow. Or paint out, should I say, really. You need to work wet in wet with this as well. Careful around those droplets. Then we go for our black-green colour. A bit more green in there. And we'll add this one in. Around that very edge. Like that. Takes off the brush now. Move it around. And if you do cover up some of those water droplets, don't worry. It's not a problem. You'll always add them back in. Then clean brush around the very edge. A little bit of water. And just catch the edge of that shadow there. Just to blur it slightly. Just catch the edge. Then give it a dry. Let's pop a little bit of yellow over some of these now, just to change them. Now, if you do go over the watercolour white more than once, it can start to blur that white paint. So be careful about that because it will blur it. Okay. Now back to the shadow. That's our black paint, our lamp black. Just painting a few little details through that kind of highlight there in places. Not too many though, we don't need too detailed in there. Clean brush. Then over the top of those lines, just lightly with a damp clean brush to soften them down a touch. So not too sharp. Now the only thing with these droplets here, we haven't got any shadows on them, have we? So I'll quickly add a few shadows here and there. Okay, back to the white paint. Load it, roll it, give it a tap or two. Make this stand out in the shadowed area. And also what I'm going to do, take most of that paint off a minute. Just paint in a few little tiny circles here and there. to give the impression of extra sort of water bubbles around in here as well. And then we need a few details, don't we, as well? So I'm going to go for a very weak version of our sap green. Then very lightly go across the grass stem. So adding a few lines in here and there. You want to vary the consistency and also vary the colour slightly. But the lines are not that dark, it's just there just for show really. Okay, slightly thicker. Probably even our duller version with a black in it. I'll use that one as well. Just a few here and there. And again, we can soften these areas down as well. If you are interested in using watercolour white, have a look at the link in the top right hand corner of the screen. I'll see you there.